What's going on, guys? Welcome back into the channel. As always, Jake Reid coming at you with a new London Bulldogs video here for the RFL. So if you guys haven't heard, we've reached the playoffs in the Relocation Football League. If you guys haven't checked out the Relocation Football League yet, make sure you go over and check out their YouTube channel and all their social media pages. Lots of awesome stuff going on with the league and lots of good game and sports content going on for you guys that you can view in the meantime, because there isn't, baseball going on or basketball going on or whatever. It's a really good league to watch some of the gameplay, simulation style gameplay. So we are up to the AFC conference, or I guess the conference playoff round here in the RFL. And let's just go ahead and we're going to recap some of the things with the team this year. We're going to recap some of the development, some of the stats and everything, how we finished, and what our plans are to move forward. So if you guys haven't heard, let's go ahead and first take a look at the schedule. We can look at the playoff schedule real quick just to see who is left in. It's the Cougars versus the Red Dragons on the AFC side, and then the actually I can't see who the other two teams are on the NFC side, but go ahead and check that out on YouTube. Unfortunately, the franchise is divided into two franchises, so I can't get you an immediate look at that. But let's go ahead and look at the team now. So my overall thoughts on the team, we're just going to kind of go through on a position-by-position basis and kind of describe how I think players performed, how they've progressed, how they fare for our future plans and things like that, just to kind of discuss what's gone on with the team. So first and foremost, I think offensively speaking, the offense was a bit of a roller coaster this season. Coming in, the team wasn't playing all that well. They were in a bit of a rough stretch, and then we were able to bounce back with them and get them into a good spot. I would say the story of the season was Timmy Merritt kind of having an up and down season, where at times he would play really well, play stellar. He would play like an elite quarterback in this league, and then at other times he would throw a couple too many interceptions, and he has owned up to that fact that he is kind of the captain of this team. He's the leader on this team, and he needs to be consistent in order for us to be successful. And that's how he played this season. His stats this season were actually really good, and we'll get more into the stats later on after I kind of review the players. But just a quick look at his stats this season. He had 4,600 passing yards with a 101.2 passer rating, 28 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Obviously, we'd like to see those numbers improve. Not bad numbers in any sense, but what you have to consider is in comparison to the rest of the RFL, there are a lot of good passers around the league. So while these might look like good numbers for the NFL or for regular football, they're not as good of numbers for the RFL. And so that's something that you have to weigh whenever we're considering how these players performed for the season. So I just want to make that clear. In addition to that, I would say that the offensive line was maybe one of our strongest assets on the team. They did a pretty good job overall protecting Timmy Merritt and opening up holes for Matt Wheaton, and allowed them to have a lot of success. What I will say our main problem was this season on offense, in my personal opinion, and you guys can let me know in the comment section if you've watched the games what you think that our major problems were this season. Feel free to let me know. My major problem with the team was that we failed to convert on third down a lot, and we're looking into addressing how we can fix that and how we can make that better moving forward. I think what that is that's mainly a scheming thing. I think that is primarily my responsibility. That's not necessarily on the players, because as you guys can see, we have a lot of talent on this offense. We have a really good quarterback, we have a really good up-and-coming running back, we have a really nice wide receiving core between Whitehead, Myrick, and Leckie, and we're keeping them all around for next season. You'll see many of the same faces coming around next season on the offense, and I think that's really important to keep these guys together, and it's going to be on me to try and scheme them into positions for them to be successful. And I've said the same thing all year. If you guys have paid attention to my previous videos on this team, or you've paid attention to the social media posts that we've had for the team, you guys will know that in my interviews and everything, I've always stated that a lot of it is on me to scheme these guys into correct positions, because we have so much talent on the offense. And so what I will say is that the plan going forward for the offense in the offseason, obviously we're always looking to add players. No position is off limits in my opinion. opinion. But what I will say is we're mainly looking defensively because, defensively speaking, you guys can tell that we don't have the best roster in the world. I have a lot of players on this defense that I like, but we also have some aging players that might regress moving into the next season and things like that. And we don't really have a ton of a pass rush. And I think that was our biggest problem as a team in general this season, was not getting enough pass rush. And that's, I addressed that at the beginning of the season. We made some efforts to get a better pass rush, bringing in guys like Riley Draft, who did come in and make a big impact and had quite a few sacks. But when you compare it with the rest of the league, when you watch other teams play, they're getting pressure all the time. They have these stud defensive players, defensive ends, linebackers that are getting pressure on a consistent basis, and we need to be able to develop some players that are going to get pressure on a more consistent basis. And so what we're looking to do in the offseason with this team is we're really looking to upgrade our pass rush. We're also looking to upgrade our cornerbacks to try and shut down enemy teams and try to make it so that our pass rush has time to get there. And so those are our main targets for the offseason. We'll see how things fall with the draft. If I'm not mistaken, we have the 12th overall pick in the draft, so that is worth considering, which is a pretty good pick, to be honest with you. There's a lot of good talent in this draft. I'm just not sure who might fall to us at that position. It might be a draft where we have somebody that we really like fall to us at that position, and it could be a draft where we take best overall, best available. There's a lot to be done in the process still. And so you guys have to bear with us, and as our scouting and everything starts to progress, we'll keep you guys updated on, potential directions that we might be going with the team and stuff like that. Obviously, we can't reveal too much because that might influence how other people pick around us, whether they trade ahead of us to get a player that we're looking for. So we can't necessarily disclose everything, but I will say that we are looking defensively. And I've addressed what our major issues are, so it is no secret which positions we're going to be looking to improve. What I will say is that we had some really good impact players break out this season. Guys like Ike Page, they might not show up on the stat card as much, but Ike Page was all over the field, and from the very first game that he started, everybody could tell that he was an impact player, and they could tell that he was going to be in there making plays constantly, whether it be pass rushing, coverage, in the run game. He was always making plays, and that one was huge for us. So some of the people that I have to tip my hat to this season are guys that came in like Ike Page and Riley Draft that aren't necessarily the highest pedigree, but turned out to be really good players for us. Shane Masters did a good job of developing for us. I mean, it is very hard to develop players in this league, and as you guys will see, we have some, tough overalls here to develop. Shane Masters being a 78, we'd really like to get his overall up so that he can continue to improve upon his abilities and hopefully play even better. But he played really well and almost won the Rookie Defensive Player of the Year. So that is something worth noting. And I would say that, overall, as an overall basis, we struggled mostly on defense. I think that a lot of people around the league would agree that watched my games that I did a good job with what I had of putting these guys in a position to succeed. And when the defense did play really well, it turned out that the offense just couldn't get it done on third down, and that was consistent. And so we know what we have to work on. It's just a matter of determining how we're going to address those points of need and how we're going to fix things. Like I said, we have some pretty good talent on this team, but compared to some other teams in the league, we still need to improve. Let's go ahead and take a look at the schedule, and then we'll take a look at some stats and stuff like that. So if we go look at my team schedule, we can go through game by game and kind of take a look at what happened throughout the season. So before I got here, we actually had the Celtic Tigers, and I joined during the Sentinels week, so I couldn't do much for this game. We scored 23 points against the Celtic Tigers and the Sentinels, but some of those points came in garbage time. The team really was not faring that well on their own. What I will say is that we then had our forced win against the Panthers because of the fact that it is split into two franchises. We all get the wins against the opposite division. And then I came back in my first RFL game, my actual RFL action. I won 28-27, and the team won 28-27. And I think we did a good job of coaching the team up to be able to get a win at this point. They maybe had a little bit of momentum from that bye week, is what we consider it. And then we got another bye week against the Panthers, which was nice, and then we came back with a win against the Bisons. So it was nice to get 2 RFL wins early on. What I will say is we then played the Voyagers, and in my personal opinion, I think we could have won this game, but a couple of turnovers and things like that hurt us. I think Matt Wheaton had a big breakaway run where he then all of a sudden got hit and fumbled, and that was really unfortunate because it got taken back for a touchdown, and that was the difference maker in this game. We went on to get our next 2 bye week wins, and then we had a tough stretch here where we lost 2 straight games to the Huskies and the Black Knights. We had a lot of rain games at this point, and it was no surprise that we lost this badly to the Huskies because they were the reigning RFL champions. And so, that kind of hurt. Mainly the Black Knights game hurt to us because I think that, playing a team that wasn't really coached at that point in time, we should have been able to come away with a win, and we just struggled in the rain. But we did have a good stretch where we won against the Conquistadors, we won against the Sentinels, and we won against the Black Knights, getting our redemption win after taking this tough loss 6-14, where we actually put up some nice numbers. We won 34-24. And so, we had a good stretch there where we put ourselves in a position where we could, potentially push for a playoff spot. Unfortunately, we couldn't get it done against the Celtic Tigers. What I will say is we played really well against the Celtic Tigers in the first half. If we look at the box score here, we actually held the game to a 10-5 game, and it just so happened in the third quarter our offense couldn't get anything going, and so in that regard, that kind of cost us, and the Celtic Tigers were able to run away with it at that point. And so that's what hurt us. But, as you guys could see, we did a decent job of game planning against them, and we just couldn't put a full game together. And that was one of our issues. And then we had a pretty bad loss, getting beat out pretty badly in the last game of the season here against the Dreadnoughts, 45-13. So as you guys can see, it was a bit of a roller coaster, as I said this entire time. Coming into this division, it's no easy feat to go up against teams like the Celtic Tigers and Sentinels. The Sentinels have a fantastic coach. The Celtic Tigers are by far one of the best teams in the league, with probably the best quarterback in the RFL of all time. And so it's never going to be easy to get it done in this division, and that's no excuse. But what I will say is, we're putting ourselves in a position that we can compete with these guys. It's a matter of whether we can continue to improve and get it done next season. Let's go ahead and take a look at some of these stats for the team this season. So if we look at Timmy Merritt in the AFC file here, we actually ended up with the 4th most passing yards, I believe it was, behind Dre Crowell, who is as I said, the greatest of all time, DeAndre Wilkins, and Brady Hudson. So that's great company to be with, but what you'll see is, in my opinion, the difference here is these guys had more touchdowns than Timmy Merritt did. And, I would like to see Timmy Merritt get up into that 35-40 touchdown range. I think that would be a big difference. And even guys like Glenn Hay had 37 touchdowns. And so we need to improve upon those numbers. What I will say is that we are committed to Timmy Merritt for, the foreseeable future. But, like I said, we're always open to evaluate positions. And if for some reason he can't get it done, there are potential changes that could be made down the line. But like I said, we are committed to him, and I think that for the foreseeable future, he showed a lot of good things at the end of the season, and I think that he looks to have another good season next year, and we're hoping for the best out of him. In terms of our rushing game, I will say that Wheaton had a really good season for a rookie, 1,249 yards, 4 touchdowns. But as you guys can see, compared to the rest of the RFL, these numbers are off the charts. Guys like Trey Worsley with 1,500 yards, Dre Shivers, these are all RFL running backs, and a couple of the AI running backs here But, Wheaton had a really strong season, and I can't complain with what we got out of Matt Wheaton this season. What I will say is that I'd like to see a better rushing average out of him. What you'll see out of some of these top backs in the leagues is they have 4.5, almost 5 yards, if not more, yardage per carry, whereas Wheaton only averaged 4 yards per carry. And I think part of that is due to the fact that he's a little bit slower of a running back. He doesn't have tremendous speed or anything like that, and that hurts him a little bit. And so what I will say is that I think one of the things we might be looking for this offseason is potentially a third down running back, somebody that can catch the ball out of the backfield a little bit more, maybe get some of the outside runs and shotgun runs, and hopefully be able to utilize their speed to their advantage, because Matt Wheaton showed that in some of those pass catching situations, he just doesn't have the speed and agility to be able to break away from the defense. And what you'll see with a lot of these guys, you look at their longest run of the season, 70, 75, 82, 85 yards, and then you come down to a guy like Matt Wheaton, who only had a 40-yard run this season. And, that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but what that shows is that he doesn't have the same type of breakaway speed as those other running backs. And so that could be something that we look to beef up in the offseason, is our running back position, to give him a little bit of help on third down and stuff like that, where he's not the ideal physical specimen for those types of formations and those types of plays. In terms of our receivers, Stanley Whitehead had a fantastic season. Matt Nene just had, one of the best seasons that I've seen in the RFL, and Stanley Whitehead came in just behind him. Not just behind him, 200 yards behind him, but Stanley Whitehead for a while was leading the league in receiving yards, and actually, if I am not incorrect here, he came close to leading the league in receptions. Did a really good job for us this season, and he is a little bit of a slower player, so at times I feel like he's not getting open as much as he should, but he never fails to come up with big catches when we need him to. And I really like what I see out of Whitehead. I think that it's a little unfortunate that his speed isn't the best, but that's just something that we have to roll with as our wide receiver. So I'm thinking, moving forward in the future, it might be worth trying him out in the slot if we can get some faster guys to stretch the field on the outside. I don't know. It's just something to think about as we move forward. But what I will say is, if we go to the Bulldogs again, the rest of our receiving squad did reasonably well. Saul Leckie had 847 yards, which I personally would say might be underperforming for him. I would have liked to have seen him get 1,000 yards based on some of his statistics, based on his ratings, being a superstar, an 88 overall, good speed, good catching, good release, good route running. I expected more out of him, and I'm not sure exactly why he wasn't getting open as much as I thought he should be. I think that he did have a few dropped passes, and that kind of contributed to it. But what I will say is that Eric Myrick surprised me, and I called him out early in the season. From a coaching perspective, he really wasn't contributing as much as I wanted him to, and he was dropping a lot of balls. And then he turned it on once I called him out and, had talked about potentially sending him to another team where he could get a fresh start, and he ended up with 740 yards, 65 receptions, 5 touchdowns, and did really well for us. And then the other thing that I think is worth noting is that our tight end combination of Ben Hartman and Thomas McDonald almost combined for 1,000 yards on the season. Actually, they did combine for over 1,000 yards on the season. So what I will say is, if I played one tight end, they might have ended up with 1,000 yards on the season, but I ended up splitting time between the two of them because they are both fantastic players. Thomas McDonald is a speedster that can stretch the field with 90 speed at tight end, whereas Ben Hartman's more of the traditional type of tight end, the more possession type of tight end that has 84 speed, but really good catching and decent run blocking stats. So it was worth splitting time between those guys. This is what I'll talk about is Matt Wheaton. With his average in the catching game, he only averaged 5 yards per catch, and I will say that was brought down significantly by his kind of lower speed and stuff like that, whereas a guy like Brandon Smithson proved to be a pretty effective third down running back. So we are bringing Smithson back next year with potentially the idea of giving him an increased role, but no guarantees on what's going to happen with that. We have to see how the processes play out. In terms of our blocking, what I will say is I was a little upset with how Jason McBride performed. I'd say Jake Moffitt played really well for us, only allowing 6 sacks at tackle, and then the other offensive linemen all played reasonably well, but Jason McBride offered up quite a few sacks, offering up 14 sacks on the season. Now, he is young, and he's looking to improve as we move forward as only a 24-year-old. But, with the pass blocking stats like he has, I was just a little bit underwhelmed with 14 sacks on the season. So we've discussed with him, some of the things that he did wrong this season, and Jason McBride knows he's looking to potentially increase his performance next season and play a little bit better for us. Defensively speaking, as I said, Shane Masters played fantastic for us. 114 tackles as a rookie is really good, even for the RFL, with 3 sacks added in there, 6 pass deflections. So I'd say he has a bright future ahead of him. I'm not sure that I'm ready to say that he's going to be one of the greatest linebackers out there, but certainly a very strong player for us moving forward. And then after that, you see some familiar faces in guys like Carlos Gent, Kasim Addison, Ronell Cosby, Brandon Bowen, Ike Page. These guys played really well for us. And, if you look at players that, played partial seasons, you look at Ike Page, you think about the fact that he only played 3/4 of the season. To have 76 tackles, 3.5 sacks from a safety spot, I wish I would have started him earlier, because this guy is a monster, and I think that he has a lot of potential to be a really good player for us in the future, and he showed it, showing his ability to make plays. What I will say is that we've talked with him, and he's got to work on his hands this offseason. He dropped a lot of interceptions that he could have had that could have changed games for us, and that cost us. In addition to that, who else were we looking at? Our big sack performers. We had nobody hit 10 sacks on the season. Roland Kaiser had 9.5, and he is our premier pass rusher. I can't argue with 9.5 sacks out of him. I have no problem with that as a 3-4 defensive end. That is really good production for him. But what I'll say is that we need an outside linebacker or somebody rushing off the edge that can get 10+ sacks on the season and apply consistent pressure for us. And that's what we tried to do with Riley Draft. Riley Draft came in late and had 7 sacks for us on the season. He showed a really great aptitude to get to the quarterback, and so we're hoping to see more out of him as we continue to move forward in this franchise next year. And then, as you guys can see, there was nobody else that really got too many sacks aside from guys like Brodeen, who you would expect a few sacks out of, Harvey Hoover, who you'd expect a few sacks out of, and that's how things played out defensively for us. Another note to talk about is Graham McLeod at kicker. He actually was the best kicker in the league for the better part of the year, and then towards the end of the year, when we started to get into the bad weather, started to get into the rain and the snow, Graham McLeod hit 32 of 38. He started to miss some field goals, which was unfortunate for a kicker of his caliber to kind of end on that note. We're hoping to bring him back next season, but as you guys are probably aware, he's old. He's 36 years old. There's no guarantee that he's coming back next season. I'm hoping he does, but we're going to have to be on the lookout for a new kicker just in case. We have to cover our bases. Chandler Overton, I personally believe, deserves a massive boost as a punter, because this guy resulted in so many safeties for us this season, punting people down to the 2 and 3 yard line consistently. As you guys will see here, his number of punts with inside the 20 was fantastic, and he changed games for us. There were some games that we might not have won if it wasn't for Chandler Overton putting us in a position to succeed. Kick return wise and punt return wise, there isn't much to go on about, so I'll kind of leave it at that. That's our statistics on the season, and I will say that we can kind of recap some of the awards. I would say that we had a couple of guys that were in contention for awards. I think mainly it was our rookies. So if we look at... Let's see, where are we going? We want to look at Defensive Rookie of the Year was one of them. We had a guy like Shane Masters. He actually finished 3rd. I thought he finished 2nd, but he was leading in the Defensive Rookie of the Year race for a while. So it was a little unfortunate that he got beat out for that. It would have been really nice to get that award and get that XP boost for that, but he did not manage to come away with it. And I think that's pretty much all in terms of awards or anything that we really had anybody in the running for. Timmy Merritt might have been in the running for quarterback. And that's pretty much the recap of the season. That's how things went. If you guys look at the record, we finished out 9-7, so just missing out on playoffs by a little bit, unfortunately. What I will say is that our plan moving forward next season is to get into double-digit wins and get ourselves into the playoffs. Obviously, we have to improve the team a little bit before we can do that. And I've already talked about in this video some of the strategies that we're going to utilize moving forward, and that is improving the defense, trying to improve the pass rush and our pass coverage. And, you know, we have to find ways to get our offense moving on third down and short yardage situations, because that was some of our main shortfalls. And I think some of that might be part of the fact that I didn't really have a true third down running back starting. I was trying to get Matt Wheaton as many reps as possible. Maybe I should have turned to Smithson a little bit earlier on, or tried to bring somebody else in to carry that load. But you know, I have to applaud Wheaton for handling all the duties that we gave him with class and doing the best that he could, and really getting the job done for us for the most part. Moving forward, I will say that, like I said, we've addressed some of the positions of need. In addition to that, we are trying to move around in the draft. You know, we're not trying to sit still at pick number 12. Like I said, we really need to get a premier player. We don't have an X factor on this team, and it's really unfortunate. That's kind of the difference maker in the RFL. If you have X factor players, they are extremely valuable, and they play way better. We do have Whitehead. He is an X factor, so I shouldn't say we don't have any X factors on this team, but we have no X factors on the defense. We honestly have very few superstar players at that, and some of them are getting up there in age. Guys like Salecki and Carlos Gent that are going to be getting up there in age that may retire, you know, in the not too distant future. So, you know, we're looking to add guys that are superstars and superstar X factors to this team, guys that are difference makers, that have special abilities that can help do those things. And another thing that I'll say is, I didn't really discuss this before, we're looking for people that can catch the football on defense, people that can generate turnovers, because that's something that sets us apart from other teams, is that we did not have a lot of turnovers. If you look at our team stats, defensively speaking, we were one of the better defenses yardage wise for a while in the RFL, but what you'll look at is turnover wise, our turnover differential was pretty bad. So takeaways, you know, at the bottom of the league is the Bulldogs. You know, we only had 13 takeaways, and you know, you scroll through here, a lot of these are the AI teams. So in reality, we were 1, 2, 3. We were third worst in takeaways this season, and that's something we have to work on extremely during the off season, is generating turnovers and bringing in players that are able to do that for us. So that's something I would be watching for us to do. Like I said, keep an eye out for us to make a trade to try and move up in the draft, because we haven't rolled that out. We have been in discussions with multiple teams to try and move up in the draft to try and acquire those types of players for us, and I think that's what we really need to be able to set us over the edge to become a playoff team and become a contender. Because, you know, when you look at the playoff teams, when you look at the really good teams in the league, they all have multiple X factors. You know, if we go and look at the Cougars, for example, they have Keone Jones, they have Denard Locker, Kentavious Henderson. London Lions, you know, multiple X Factor players, Marvin Woolfolk, and we don't have any. You know, we have one X Factor player on our team, and that is a tremendous difference for us. So we're going to be looking to move up and get the best players that we can to try and help this team out in the future. One thing to talk about that I think is really worth noting is, if we look at our draft picks, is we do have an extra second round pick, and this is from Salt Lake City. This is from the Pioneers, who ended up finishing pretty low this season, so it's a really nice second round pick. If we actually look at the standings as a whole, the Pioneers, actually, I believe the Pioneers have the first overall pick in the entire RFL, because if you exclude all the AI teams, they ended up with the best pick in the draft. So very high potential that we could get somebody good with that second round pick, so it's nice that we have extra high overall draft capital, and hopefully that will allow us to get a couple superstars and stuff that could immediately impact the team and immediately help us out and make a difference. So other than that, there's not too much else to cover. Make sure you guys leave your questions down in the comment section. I'll address everything. Consider it like a press conference. If there's anything that you have a question about our plans moving forward, how we'll address a certain position, If there's a specific player that you think that we might be evaluating in terms of, are we going to keep them, are we going to move away from them, I'll be happy to answer all your questions. Like I said, we can't give away all of our strategy because, you know, with the draft coming up, we have to, you know, have a little bit of hidden strategy so people don't necessarily take advantage of us giving out too much information. But I will be happy to address all your comments down in the comment section. Leave those down there. If you guys appreciate the updates on the Bulldogs here in the RFL, make sure you leave a like on the video, comment down below. Like I said, subscribe to the channel if you're new, because I'll always be posting my updates here on the Jacob Reid YouTube channel, because I am Jacob Reid and I'm the coach of the Bulldogs. Yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one. I hope you guys have a great night. Have a good one.